Okay, welcome to Building Your Own Herbal First Aid Kit with me, Abby Artemisia of the Wonder School. And I forgot to start recording. So for those of you here watch the recording, all that you missed was we did like a 1 minute little quick grounding meditation and just felt our feet on the floor, took a deep breath, thought about where we are, connecting with this place, um, being grateful for something in our lives today, and being grateful for some of the plants that we were around or ingested today. So feel free to pause the recording and do that. I want to just say again, welcome to everyone who's here and everyone watching the recording. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm here in Western North Carolina in Asheville, and this is the unceded territory of the Cherokee tribe and also the Catawba and the Yuchi and potentially multiple other tribes. So I just want to honor all of those people and let you know, if you don't already know, that a lot of the information that we have on herbs and as herbalists today in the United States and around the world has been stolen from indigenous people and the descendants of enslaved people and enslaved people. So I just really like to acknowledge that and think about what we can do to honor that. The Wonder School is a nonprofit, and we work through the nonprofit to do something we call herbal reparations, where we give herbs, herbal medicine, and botanical education to indigenous people, the various BIPOC people. So it doesn't make up for what has happened, the wrongs that have happened, but we're doing our best and learning every day. So this class, again, building your own herbal first aid kit, this is more of an intro. I'm just going to say this, like, really, and this is about building your kit. This is not so much about how to put into practice herbal first aid. So I just want to make sure that y'all know that, because herbal first aid would be at least a whole weekend class. And I do want to let y'all know that I will be offering that class hopefully in about 6 weeks or so with an amazing clinical herbalist friend of mine, Renee Prince. And so keep an eye on your email for that when we announce that. And also, this is a great introduction to Wildcrafted Herb School, which you can register for now. Registration is open if you want to come hang out with me in person in Appalachian, North Carolina, 2 days a month. And it's just one Friday and Saturday a month, back to back, April through September. So lots of people travel to come and we learn about all this stuff. We make a lot of the remedies that we're going to talk about today. We learn how to forage them sustainably and process them to make these remedies. And we learn about Afrobotany. We learn about the habitat and ecology of this area. We learn basic botany, and we have 2 indigenous teachers. We get to go to Cherokee. We learn about medicinal mushrooms. So it's super duper fun. And there's an amazing community of people that is created. And lots of those folks hang out with each other ongoing after the course. So I'm just going to put a link to that in the chat in case y'all are interested. And you just sign up on the prospective student form. And then you get to have a fun little meet and greet with me. So I'm trying to bring that up. Okay, so that is in the chat for you now. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about that too. But let's get into why we're actually here today. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Abby Artemisia. I'm a botanist, herbalist, forager, author, podcaster, teacher, lots of things. And I do want to give you all a disclaimer. I am in training to be a clinical herbalist. I am not yet a clinical herbalist. I'm a community herbalist. And so I do not currently take clients, but I do have 20 years of herbal experience teaching, being in the woods, making and taking herbal remedies. So some of your questions, if they're very clinical, I may not be able to answer. So I just want to say that, and it would be irresponsible of me to answer them. So this is going to be from my perspective as a community herbalist. And I think that I wanted to make this a free class because I think that everyone should have access to this knowledge. And we are starting an herbal clinic, and I think that everyone should have access to healthcare. So I also want to name my lineage. My main teacher has been Leslie Williams, who now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. She has studied with many, many people. She's an amazing herbal elder. And I have also learned from multiple Cherokee people who are friends and family of mine. I have a Cherokee granny. And I have learned at conferences from lots of other teachers and from friends all over the world. So again, I do want to give you that disclaimer that I'm not a clinical practitioner and that everyone is an individual. So not everything that I'm going to say is going to apply to everyone. You have to use your common sense. And there are always risks with any herbal remedy, just like there are with any other medicine. So aspirin, right? There's tons of risks with aspirin. And so I think it's important to remember that anyone can have an allergy to anything, whether it be a food or an herb. So just keep that in mind. And I did get some questions. I said if anybody has questions, you can let me know ahead of time, as well as here in the chat. And one of my previous students, again from Wildcrafted Herb School last year, Mary, wrote in, and she asked two great questions, which were, and again, there's no stupid questions, only the unasked question. So one of her questions was about an herb. I'm going to talk about yarrow and also more in the broad sense as well with multiple herbs is like, how do you know if it's okay to work with those herbs with other people? And that is a hard question to answer. But what I will say is like we don't, right? Because again, like not everyone has tried every herb and anyone can have a reaction to any herb. So we want to always err on the side of caution. We want to always ask someone first to get permission to make sure that we can give them what we're going to give them and tell them any potential side effects if we're able. We want to try to ask them if they're on any medications, but a lot of these herbs haven't been studied extensively and we don't know the contraindications. So just be aware of that. There is, of course, a Good Samaritan law. So I would encourage y'all to look that up and know what your liabilities are. But basically, if you're in an emergency situation and someone needs help, then you can usually help them. But please do your research on the Good Samaritan law. And so using yarrow as an example, because that was her specific question, yarrow stops bleeding, but what if somebody had an issue with blood clotting and we didn't know it? And maybe they didn't know it. So one thing, I was actually talking to Renee, who I just mentioned, who's a clinical herbalist, and we're going to co-teach this weekend class together. What she said was you would just give them enough to get to emergency care. So this is yarrow, something we would put on topically to stop bleeding. And so we would just give the person enough of that to stop the bleeding. And she said, we could always assume if the person is over 55 or so, they may have blood clotting issues. They may be on Coumadins. And so we would want to be extra careful. But yeah, any of this first aid we're going to do, it would hopefully be in an area where we can get someone to emergency care. And so this is just like our stopgap, right? It's just in the immediate present to get them to emergency care. And a lot of times, I think it's important to like kind of define first aid too, right? Like a lot of us think of first aid as like it's an emergency situation, but there's actually a lot of everyday first aid that we need that isn't an emergency. So I'm going to talk about a lot of those situations because in reality, hopefully, we're going to have those situations a lot more often than we are emergency situations. So these are things that we want to have on hand. And if any of y'all saw actually read what I wrote on social media, we're going to be talking about different situations and having different kits for different situations and different people because we're all individuals, right? And we all have different needs. So you're going to have maybe a different kit at home than you would in your car or than you would in your backpack. And you would have a different kit in your backpack if you're just going on a day hike than if you're going backpacking. So these are all things for y'all to think about when you're designing your first aid kit. It's definitely not a one size fits all situation. Okay, so another question that Mary asked was about use by dates or expiration dates, right? When we make our own remedies, they don't have those. So it's important to know about this. Now, it really depends on what kind of remedy. So if we're working with a tincture, which is an extract of an herb, most of the time it's going to be an alcohol extract. It doesn't have to be if you're someone who doesn't consume alcohol. It can be an extract with vinegar or glycerin. But if it's with alcohol and we use a high enough percentage of alcohol, then which is going to be different for every herb and every situation, like where we harvested that, depending on how much water is in that herb. And if you're brand new to herbalism, some of this may be way over your head. That's totally fine. I always say just like throw it out the window. Just take what you need and what works for you right now. So yeah, but if it is preserved appropriately with the alcohol, then it could last indefinitely and you don't have to worry about it. I have noticed that some of my alcohol tinctures aren't preserved enough and they haven't gone bad. I have had some mold just on top if I didn't strain them, which I usually don't. They just sit in the bottle I make them in. It was like a very rare occasion. It's only happened once or twice in my whole like 20 years of making remedies. But the herbs on top were sticking up above the alcohol and they got a little bit dry and it was not an anaerobic situation anymore. And so there was oxygen in there when they molded. So FYI, but I can usually tell if a tincture is on its way out by, like it's very rare it will get mold, but like if I take a tincture and it tastes really watery and not strong anymore, then I can tell it's on its way out and it hasn't really gone bad. It's just losing its efficacy. So it's not as effective anymore. So, but if you had something like just dried powdered herbs that you were going to make into a tea or something, we use this really super fancy word in herbalism to tell if it's good anymore. And that word is organoleptics, which is kind of hilarious because it's this huge word that literally just means using our senses. So we would smell it, we would taste it, Of course, like I always tell my students this is not like if you're out in the wild and you don't know what a plant is. This is assuming you have the proper ID, right? And you know what you're eating is safe. So you always want to have 100% positive ID all the time. Um, but yeah, you're going to use your senses. So does it look like what it would look like when it was newly dried? Does it smell like that? Does it taste like that? All of those things. And that's how you can tell. So it's, we have like all this fancy technology these days, but like things can be as simple or as difficult as we make them oftentimes. So I just want to put that out there. Okay. So let's talk about the essentials. This is something you'd have in any first aid kit, whether it was herbal or not. And like, I definitely have a couple of first aid kits I bought from the store. They're super helpful. I have one that's made specifically to keep in your backpack. It's for 1 to 2 people. It's got all of these things in it, and I have one in my car. And so, ace bandages, other kinds of bandages, and gauze pads, band-aids, scissors so we can cut our gauze and things, tape, like medical tape, tweezers, so like if you get a splinter, like a piece of glass or something, eye cups. These are amazing. I wish that I knew where one was right now to show you, but I should have prepared for that. But I definitely have one in my car and one in my house. They're freaking fabulous. You can find them at the pharmacy. You can find them online. I got one online, which was blue glass. It's so beautiful. But they look like a tiny goblet. They're like this big. And you put very clean water in them. You can boil your water first. You can put rose water in them, and other herbs. I think I have this further, like I'm going to talk about this later, but it's a way to wash your eye and get out any particulate matter, or like if you have an eye infection. And you always want to keep that super clean. You can just boil it, which is the great thing about them being glass. So that's a good thing to keep in there. Cotton balls, gloves for sure. Make sure they're not latex if you're allergic to latex. And syringes, the kind that don't have a needle in them, are really great for washing out wounds. And if anybody else can think of something that I didn't name, please put it in the chat. I would love to know what it is. But your basic first aid kit kind of stuff. All right. So first we're going to talk about topicals. What can you put on a wound or on an infection? So on the outside of your body or in your orifices. But for some kind of infection that it can reach topically. So witch hazel, I make my own witch hazel because we have with the witch hazel plant that grows here. If y'all don't know, this is my book. It's called the Herbal Handbook for Homesteaders. And I have a recipe for how to make your own witch hazel in there. And if you make it yourself, I feel like it's much better than what you can buy in the store. And so you can put that on to clean wounds. And also you can make a poison ivy spray with it, with just the witch hazel, or you can add some wild crafted plants called jewelweed and plantain, which are natural antidotes for poison ivy. Not the plantain like the banana. It's the weedy plantain. They're not related. Woo. Okay. So arnica is a great one to have around. It is a homeopathic. It comes in a gel. You can also get this in little pellets that you can take internally. And sometimes I'll do both. And so it's for any kind of injury type trauma and muscle soreness, strains, sprains, that kind of thing. That's one that you would buy. because homeopathics are very hard to make. I'm not somebody who knows how to do that. So you can buy them pretty reasonably, even at the pharmacy these days. Liniments are wonderful. Liniments are basically a tincture that you just put on topically. And so these are great at muscle relaxing, they're great for pain. So it's kind of like making your own icy hot, depending on what ingredients you add. And so some that I like to add are cayenne, peppermint, chamomile, ginger, lobelia. So think about the heating herbs and the cooling herbs, right? And the relaxing herbs. It's kind of funny. Back in the day when it first came out, I watched Orange is the New Black, and they actually showed them making one of these liniments with cayenne. And like everybody, it was like the woman who was the kitchen manager. It was for her, I think. And it was cool because like the prisoner who made it, like got some kind of benefit, like extra food or something, because she made this for the woman. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, then you just put on topically. And the great thing about those topical ones, assuming you don't have a reaction to those herbs, is that you can put it on as much as you want, as often as you want, because it's external. It will still go into our bloodstream, but it will affect you differently than internally. And some people who have an issue with it internally may not have an issue with it externally. But if you're someone who has sensitive skin or reacts, like has a lot of allergies or food sensitivities, it's always a good idea. It's always a good idea anyway, but especially if you have those issues, to start slowly. Just try one herb at a time, wait 24 hours, make sure you don't have a reaction. Okay, black walnut tincture, really good to have around. I also have a recipe for that in my book, The Herbal Handbook for Homesteaders. And it's antifungal and it's anti-worm, so it's a dewormer. So I use this effectively on myself for a ringworm, which I got from some nasty children. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. That's a joke because when my daughter was little, I always used to like call children giant germs. So, I mean, come on, let's be real. They are, but they're also wonderful. So, um, yeah, I got it from kids because kids are constantly passing around this kind of stuff because like they touch something and then you touch it and then it transfers that way. So it worked immediately when I put this black walnut tincture on the ringworm. It was gone in like a day. It was amazing. Um, yes, giant germs. Raven, I knew you would understand what I was talking about. I didn't mean to offend you, so you get it. So good. So salves. Salves are amazing. Again, we make them in herb school, and I have recipes in my book. And there's so many herbs you can put into them. Some of my favorite herbs to put in them are comfrey, plantain, and calendula. Comfrey should not be used though on deep wounds because it will seal the wound super quickly and it will seal in the bacteria. So just know that, but you could make like just a plantain salve and it would be good for that, or just a yarrow salve. Also, Solomon seal salve is wonderful for tendons and ligaments. It really gets down deep. And you can take that as a tincture as well. Okay. So, essential oils are a tough one, and I have many mixed feelings about them. So, yeah, they are very, very strong. So be very, very careful. Use them in limited amounts. And always, even if people say no, my recommendation is to always mix them with a carrier oil to dilute them. So like olive oil, almond oil, anything like that. Um, hold on one second. All right, sorry about that, y'all. The allergies are kicking in, they're getting me. It's like it got warm and everything just went crazy. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but luckily I'm taking all my herbs, so it's not bothering me very much. Drinking my nettles. If y'all saw my post today, drink your nettles. This is the time. Um, okay, essential oils are very strong. Please be very, very careful. Even diffusing them can be toxic to like dogs and cats. So make sure you know which ones are safe. All right. But some good ones I always like to have on hand are lavender as a calmer, uh, and yeah, mostly for that. And citronella for bug repellent. There's a blend that's called Olbas Oil, and it has things like peppermint, eucalyptus, cloves. That's really great for clearing the sinuses, and so you can just hold it up to your nose and snip it. It's also good to dab on mixed with carrier oil, right? Like if you're getting on a plane or you're around a bunch of other people. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hillary, for asking me to spell that. It's Olbas. I'll put it in the chat. Olbas Oil. That might be the brand name too. I can't remember. But um, yeah, I know a friend who runs an herbal clinic, and she will always just like dab that on herself when she's in clinic to help protect herself um, from germs. So yeah, and then rose water is one that she also uses. Her name is Lorna Money Brodek. She's amazing. She started Herbalista, which is a wonderful clinic out of Atlanta that has transitioned a little bit now, but now it's floor and forage. Um, oh yeah, they also have pastille versions. Yeah, like internal ones. I don't take essential oils internally, but yeah. There was a question from Raven. Is the salmon seal tincture used for tendons when taking internally? Is it as effective as the topical? I would honestly do both. So I would just get like that double action and do both. Good questions. All right. So neem oil is an amazingly strong antifungal. And oh, Olbas is good for headaches too. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. So neem is a plant that grows in India, and they make an oil out of it, and it's a very strong antifungal. It's anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial. Good for lots of things. You can put it, if you have chickens, you can put it in their water, if like your chickens have an infection, things like that. You can give it to your animals. Of course, just make sure that it's okay for that animal, that particular animal. So that's a great one. You can like get it in mouthwash, good for like dealing with infections in the mouth and like avoiding them and things. Then goldenrod or bee balm oil are great anti-inflammatories. So these are oils that you would infuse yourself and just on the stove or in a crock pot or without heat at all. You could just do it in a jar. And I harvest the goldenrod and bee balm myself, and then I infuse it and strain it for muscle aches and as an anti-inflammatory. Okay, and then ear oils. And I know I'm going super fast, y'all. You'll all get the recording, so don't worry. And again, you don't have to absorb all of this. Also, I'm like the queen of unintentional puns. So FYI, that was a ridiculous unintentional pun that you can absorb this as we're talking about topical remedies. Okay, so ear oil, I also have a recipe for that in this book. And I usually make that with mullein flowers or leaves and garlic infused in oil, the same way that I make the goldenrod or bee balm oil. So those are great plants for that. I used to do that with my daughter when she was little and she got earaches. Okay, bug spray. There's lots of herbs that you can make bug spray from. Again, I have a recipe in the herbal handbook. Um, and I want to let y'all know this. So yarrow, like I always add yarrow tincture to my bug spray, has been found. It's been tested by the military and been found to be at least, if not more effective than DEET, like the super chemically strong DEET bug spray. But you do have to apply it more often. So be aware. And there's lots of good essential oils we can put in there too. So rose geranium, lemon eucalyptus, that kind of thing. I always have activated charcoal around. It comes in capsules. You can buy it lots of places. And it's a great antimicrobial. So when I say antimicrobial, that could include antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. Sometimes it's just one or a couple of those, but sometimes it's all. So it's great for that. Topically, you can just empty that capsule on the wound and make a paste with a little water. It's also great internally for food poisoning. So I always keep those capsules around just in case. It will knock it out so quick. It's amazing. And then we talked about eye washes briefly. So you put in your eye cup, again, clean water or boiled water, and any herb that has berberine in it. So like any of the yellow roots. So here we actually have a plant called yellow root. Golden seal, if you're getting it from a super sustainable source, because it is threatened. You would make a really strong tea with that. And then you could put it in your eye wash. It might sting a little, but it will be antibacterial and antiviral. You can put rose water in there, which is super soothing, like especially if you have an injury to your eye. You can just do a saline wash. So you can look up how to make that with just salt and water. So Raven's asking, why is golden seal threatened? Because it's been over harvested. That's why. But we do have invasive plants that we can substitute for that, which is great. So like Oregon grapefruit and barberry both have those yellow roots with berberine in them that are antimicrobial. So I'm a big fan and teacher of using the invasives. All right. One of my students this past year taught me about milk. Katie, some of y'all know, milk topically for the eyes. And so I think that this originally started with breast milk. So some of y'all that may weird out, but whatever, it's been done throughout history. Actually just like spraying breast milk into a baby's eye for an infection. And I think one of our students one time in a class somewhere actually like this happened. So they tried it out. It worked. I'm saying berberine, Raven, with E, just like you spelled it. I'll put it in the chat. But the plant that one of them that has berberine in it is barberry with an A. So that's a little confusing, putting them both in the chat now. Okay, and it's barberry because it's got barbs on it. It's got like thorns on it. But you can actually just pour regular milk into a glass and into an eye cup and rinse your eye with that for an eye irritation. Okay, so aloe, I learned this one recently. You can actually like slice a leaf in half vertically, like going the long way, and then dehydrate it, like dry it, and keep that in your first aid kit, and then just rehydrate it whenever you need it for any kind of skin irritation. I thought that was so cool. All right. So berberine, that's a great question. Yeah, berberine is actually a phytochemical. So it's a natural chemical in the plant. And you can like this is why I don't like a lot of remedies that you can buy in the store because they'll say that they're like berberine extracts and they're standardized. So they just take out the berberine and not the other parts of the plant. And that can actually be dangerous because the other parts of the plant balance out that part of the plant, they balance each other out. And so you could have a reaction to just berberine that you wouldn't have if the rest of the plant was included. Also, like people think that one part of St. John's wort, the hypericin, is the active part that helps with depression, but they've done tests that show when they removed it from the plant, it actually didn't work. So, FYI, super interesting. All right. So, questions. I just breezed through that. I will also tell y'all I am neurodivergent, so I do wander around all over the place. So if the way my brain works doesn't make sense to you, I totally understand. Or if you have a different learning style, totally understand. I'm going to take a sip of tea. And if y'all are drinking tea, put in the chat what kind of tea you're drinking tonight. I will say I have ready-made tea bags because we do what we can. We do what's accessible to us. And I get tired of drinking my own tea sometimes that I make. And also, I've been drinking nettle tea all day and I didn't want to pee all night. So I didn't want to have to pee the whole time during this class. So lots of people around me are getting sick right now. So I am drinking one blend that has some turmeric in it and like cloves and other good antimicrobial herbs. And I also have one that is, I can't remember if it's Breathe Easy or Throat Coat, but it like had some good mucilaginous herbs that are nice and soothing for the throat so I could talk more easily. Okay, questions are, could you touch on ear oil once more? Sure. So you can infuse herbs into oil. I infuse mullein leaves and or flowers into olive oil in a double boiler, sorry, and then strain it. I also add garlic or just in a pan. Sometimes you just have to be really careful you don't burn the oil. And you make sure that it's cooled down enough, right? You can do the old bottle trick if you had a baby and you fed them bottles. You always test it after you warm it on your wrist right here to make sure it's not too hot. You can do that with the ear oil because you don't want to burn your little baby's ears or your own ears. And then you just put it in a dropper bottle and drop it into the eardrum, a few drops. And can I repeat about the milk? Yes, put a little bit of milk in an eye cup, or you could just put it in a dropper and like drop it into the eye, and you like tip that eye cup. You make a seal with the eye cup over your eye without glasses on, and you tip it and you just leave it on there for a little bit. Okay, Hillary's drinking throat coat, but I made mint tea from my winter window garden the other day. Oh, I tried to make a winter window garden from because I found some herb plants at the grocery store for $2 and I was so excited. And then it turned out they all had fungus gnats and they all died. And I was so sad. I tried to spray them with neem oil, but I didn't keep up with it. And they might have just been too far gone when I got them. So it was very sad. But my bee balm, which is like stronger than thyme and grows wild, and I planted it in my garden, actually survived all winter long and now it's regrowing. So that's super exciting. So yay for that. Y'all all drink your antimicrobials. Okay. Let's talk about immunity. Colds and flus. So I do buy some of my remedies. There's nothing wrong with that. And one that I always have on hand is called Wellness Formula. It's by a company called Source Naturals. I have used it for years because it's such a great blend and it has herbs in it that would be hard for me to get that I definitely can't harvest. Some of them are Chinese herbs, and it is um, this common Chinese formula called yin chow. And that is very old formula. And it's specifically for immunity. And it's really great. And they combine it with other herbs like elderberry and echinacea and golden seal. And I will just take it like if I'm starting to come down with something, or if I'm around sick people, sometimes even if I'm like about to travel, I'll just take it like as a preventative, but I'm not allowed to say prevent as an herbalist, FYI. So I can't claim that it does anything. Western medicine. So I love that one. And it comes in giant tablets, FYI, if you have a hard time swallowing tablets, but it also comes in tincture. So that one's great. You do want to be careful. So I also put on here separately echinacea, golden seal, and elderberry. Oh yeah, I'll type it in the chat. Liv, it's Wellness Formula by Source Naturals. They don't pay me, I swear. And can you say prophylactic instead of prevent? That's a good question. People might think I'm talking about condoms then, but I'm okay with that. Condoms are good too, right? Anyway. Oh, goodness. So it does have these herbs in it, right? Echinacea, golden seal, elderberry. We do want to be really careful with all those herbs if you have an autoimmune condition. So everyone is different. Everyone with an autoimmune issue is different. So you're going to have to do your own research on that and see what works for you. Some people, if they're not in a flare, those herbs are fine for them. Some people can't take them at all. Some people, which I'm also going to talk about mushrooms, who have autoimmune issues can't do mushrooms. So you have to unfortunately find out what works for you and what doesn't. But any of those herbs are great for the immune system. Echinacea, elderberry, golden seal, although I would prefer you substitute another herb that's not threatened for the golden seal. So again, yellow root, Oregon grapefruit, barberry, any of those. Elderberry also, when I was talking to Renee about this, she was like, you have to be really careful if you harvest your own elderberry or you're buying elderberry from another herbalist, unfortunately, because it grows right by water. And so two things to be concerned about. One is knowing that water quality. And so is that water relatively clean? Number two is, do you trust your own or the person who harvested it? Do you trust their plant ID skills? Because also what grows by water is water hemlock, which is like fatally poisonous. Not to scare anyone, I teach cautious optimism, but that cautious part is the most important part. Always 100% positive ID. I know someone who got poisoned by poison hemlock who had been an herbalist, a clinical herbalist for 30 years. So any of us can mess up. Please know your herbs. Really, really super good, and where your herbs are coming from. Okay. So mushrooms, my favorites, my all-time favorite is reishi. If I could only pick one, because it grows all around me, and it's not the Chinese reishi species. It is the Appalachian species. So if y'all are into Latin, it's Ganoderma tsugae, which is named after the tree that it grows on, Tsuga canadensis, which is our hemlock tree, but not poison hemlock. So, like plantain and plantain, we were talking about, this is where it gets confusing. So, I have a course. You can find it at thewonderschool.com. It's called Botany Breakdown, and it's a virtual course to learn about botany specifically for herbalists and foragers. And I teach you this stuff. So Latin makes all of us crazy, and it is classist and racist. And by learning it, we can empower ourselves and reclaim it and make sure that we're getting the appropriate plant. So, and make things less confusing for ourselves, like when there are two things named hemlock. So this is not the poison hemlock I'm talking about. This is the evergreen tree hemlock that is not poisonous. And so the reishi mushroom we have here grows on that. And it is amazing. It's an immunomodulator. So it takes the immune system from where it is to where it needs to be. It's incredible. Herbs are amazing. So some other of my favorite mushrooms are turkey tail mushroom, hen of the woods, and birch polypore. So hen like a chicken, hen of the woods. And because it kind of looks like a chicken, if you use your imagination. And of course, we have turkey tail, which looks like a turkey's tail. So it's kind of fun. And then birch polypore grows on birch trees. So all of those are great for the immune system, plus some others. But I make a blend with all of those. There's a great company too, if you don't have access to foraging mushrooms, which you do always have to be super careful with mushrooms too, with your identification. But a friend of mine and co-teacher for herb school works for Host Defense, which is Paul Stamets' company. I'll put that in the chat. So if you just want to buy your mushrooms, this is a super trustworthy company. And Paul is like one of the most amazing, most knowledgeable mushroom researchers in the world. So I trust his products. And they like support the bees and other good causes. So fire cider, if you don't know about this one, we made this on like the second to last day of herb school, and it was so fun. There's a lot of different ways you can make it. The basics are you're infusing herbs into apple cider vinegar, and you can put anything you want in there, but the basics are hot peppers, and garlic, onions, horseradish, black pepper. You can put turmeric in there and ginger if you want, lots of other things. So look up fire cider. I also have a recipe in this book, and I just use it as hot sauce. I put it on my food because I love hot things, but you can take shots of it if you're brave. You can mix it with juice and tea and things. And it's just great to take when you feel something coming on or prophylactically on a daily basis. Okay, and then again, Olbas and other essential oils, which you can diffuse if you want. Again, making sure if you have animals around that they're safe for those animals. All right. Yeah, thanks for that, Raymond. I'm going to use that all the time now. Okay. Any questions on immune support? Of course, there's lots of other things out there, but those are the basics. All right. So fevers. My top three are yarrow, boneset, and elderflower. So three different plants. Elderflower is the flower of elderberry. And yarrow and boneset are both very, very bitter. So if you have a child, I would recommend elderflower. Elderberry could work too. Elderflower, that was more specific for fevers. And the best way to take these for a fever would be in a hot tea. Um, and what they're going to do is they're going to make you sweat out that fever. So I could say so much on this. I'm not going to go into it, but fevers are actually good for us, except when they get too high. So if they get up to like 105, then, you want to seek pharmaceuticals and or like emergency care. Like definitely, I would say emergency care at that point. Um, so yeah, but teas of all of those are great. And they will make you sweat, but they'll make you sweat out the fever. You can also like get into a cool bath or do a foot bath if you really needed to bring down that fever quickly, or even an ice bath. Okay, so question, what was the mushroom? Zacchaeus, what was the mushroom? Birch polypore. I'll put it in the chat. So a polypore is a type of mushroom. Any mushroom that has pores on the bottom of it, like on the bottom of the cap. So the little tiny holes is a polypore. So it's a polypore that grows on birch trees, but it's a specific species. And oh, host defense has many formulas, but I think they have one specific one that's for the immune system. And then they have multiple others for various things. But I would say, honestly, most of theirs are going to be immune supporting because from the research they're doing, they're finding that pretty much every mushroom or almost every mushroom, especially the wild ones, are which like they were all originally wild, but they all are anti-carcinogenic and immune supporting, like most all of them. Okay, so yarrow, boneset, and elderflower for fevers. Wow, I know, right? So cool. Mushrooms are freaking amazing and delicious, many of them. But again, 100% positive ID. There are white toadstool mushrooms that look super unassuming that are some of the deadliest mushrooms in the world. Okay, natural antibiotics from herbs. So Spanish needles. This one, I have this one in my book. I'm going to type in another name for it, which is also the beginning, the genus, the beginning of the Latin name of the plant, Bidens. So like the president, but with an S. And that one is wonderful, sometimes called Spanish needles. And there are multiple different species of it depending on where you live, but it does grow wild. It's called Spanish needles because it has very sharp little burrs on it that will stick into your clothing. And definitely if you have a long-haired dog, they're probably the bane of your existence. But super antibiotic. There's a lichen called Usnea that grows around here and many other areas. Usnea, I'll type it in the chat. Also called old man's beard because that's what it looks like. It's green, but it looks like an old man's beard. It hangs down really far. And garlic, of course, and sage. So like a lot of kitchen, I need to teach a class on this. Maybe that'll be the next free class I do. It will be kitchen herbs, like kitchen cabinet herbs. But so many of our culinary herbs are super medicinal. So like sage, garlic, onions, thyme, what else? Basil, like so many of the herbs, cinnamon, ginger are like so super medicinal and so strong. And we don't think about it, right? If I was starting to get sick, one of the first things I would do would be to just take some ginger, like dried or fresh, and make a tea and eat it. Like that would be one of the main things I would do. So I think it's super easy to get overwhelmed and feel like we don't know enough when there's these things in our kitchen every day that are amazingly powerful. Okay. So what else? And then neem again and echinacea. So the antibiotics again are Spanish needles, Usnea lichen, garlic, sage, echinacea, and neem. And again, making sure if you have an autoimmune condition that you're making sure those are okay for you. All right. Coughs. My all-time favorite hands down herb for coughs is cherry bark. And this is such an old-time remedy. This is why I love talking about this. So this is why when you go into the pharmacy and you look for cough syrup, it's all red and cherry flavored because people used to actually make cough syrup out of cherry bark. So you can still, people still do today. You can still make this yourself. It's very easy. And again, it's in here. I show how to harvest it. I prefer to harvest the twigs because it's much less invasive to the tree, but you can make cherry bark cough syrup. So good question, Liv. How would I utilize those herbs for antibiotics in tea? Question mark. Yes. Some of them in tea, some of them in tincture, some of them eating like garlic. I would just eat as much of it as I possibly could. You do have to be careful. Like I would eat it with food or make sure I had other food in my belly because it can be irritating to the stomach, especially if you eat it on an empty stomach. I would eat hummus. Like I would make soup. I would make bone broth and put a ton of garlic in it or buy bone broth, whatever is accessible to you. Um, but yeah, it depends on the herb, right? So you have to kind of just research that herb. But for the Spanish needles, Bidens, I would make tea for sure. I would do tincture. The Usnea is a little tricky. There's lots of opinions on the best way to make the remedy, make the tincture. Like most people say you need to infuse it in alcohol. Some people do tea, but it's a little tricky. I actually do a hot alcohol infusion, but you have to just look that up, how to do it. You have to be careful and do it correctly so you don't set your house on fire because alcohol is flammable, right? But there's lots of recipes online for that. So hopefully that's helpful. Other things like sage, I would just make tea. You could get neem oil in capsules or just the oil extract, echinacea, tincture or tea. And then do you need to juice the ginger first for tea? No, you don't need to. Just if it's dry, then you would make what we call a decoction again in this book. And of course, I talk about this in herb school all the time. And we show like we talk about this with every herb we harvest, but you make a decoction. So that's gonna be you're gonna simmer it. And you can simmer the fresh herb too, but you don't have to. So what else? Great questions, y'all. Good job. Okay, so coughs. Cherry bark is amazing. I learned in the last few years, some people say you should not heat it. So it's up to you what you believe, but you can just infuse it. My favorite way to make cough syrup, if I had enough time, would be to infuse it into a mix of honey and vinegar, what we call an oxymel in herbalism. So mixing together honey and apple cider vinegar, and then just put your twigs right in there. Maybe let them sit out for a few days first so the water can evaporate, and then just put them straight in there. And it's super duper easy. Leave them in there for a few weeks if you have time. You can start scooping out of there, though, within a few days if you need to. And that'll be delicious. You could also heat those just a little bit to speed up the process. Also for coughs, mullein is a great one. The same one for the ears. It is cherry bark and mullein are great expectorants, so they help get things up and out of the lungs. Coughs are tricky. It's just like everything else in herbalism. This is not Western medicine. This is not, I mean, yes, some of it comes from the West, but it's not pharmaceutical medicine. It's not this for that. Like I am giving you that right now, but we try to think about it holistically. So seeing the whole picture. Is it a wet cough? Is it a dry cough? Um, is it going on all night long? Is it more in the morning when you wake up? And that's going to help you determine what herbs you're going to use. So that's a little bit more advanced, but it's good to think about. So mullein would be great in a tea for this. You'd want to strain it because it has tiny little hairs on it. Oh, yes, elecampane. I should add that to this list. Elecampane is one we learned about. Co-teacher for herb school, Cindy Quay, who's an amazing Menominee herbalist from the Menominee tribe. Elecampane is specific to her tribe. It's a special herb of her tribe in Wisconsin. And it's incredible. So yes, definitely elecampane for a deep lingering cough. That one would be great in a syrup or a tincture. And what else? Lobelia in very small quantities. It's a very strong herb. So that one would most likely be a tincture, and it would be like 1 to 7 drops, literally, because it's so strong. It's also great for some people. It doesn't work for everyone, but for asthma. And you can smoke it. Mullein and lobelia, you can also smoke. And violet leaf. Violet leaf in a cough syrup is amazing. And it's mucilaginous, so it's coating for the mucous membranes. All right. What else? Any questions? I'm taking another sip of tea. My mucilaginous tea. Y'all also feel free to get up, go to the bathroom, stretch, eat. I don't care. We're herbalists here. We need more herbalists in the world, okay? This is my PSA for y'all. If you're too young to know what that means, it stands for public service announcement. We need more herbalists in the world. If you work with herbs at all, if you make your own tea, if you cook with herbs, you can call yourself an herbalist. Don't go out trying to work with clients, but you can call yourself an herbalist. Please do. We need more. All right. Teach people what you learned today. So important. Teach the children. Okay. Do I like Essiac tea for anti-tumor? Yes, what I know about it, but I don't know enough about it. But I've heard, it's been used forever, effectively. So I totally trust that. I can't remember all the herbs in it. I know red clover is in there. It's wonderful. I love red clover. So I would, yeah, if I was working with somebody with a tumor issue, then yes, I would probably turn to Essiac tea. Not exactly first aid, but still it is care. And there's lots of kinds of tumors too, right? Okay. Next we have sore throat. So y'all are really getting your bang for your buck here because you didn't pay anything. This is like a 2-hour class, something that I would usually charge for. So FYI, you're welcome. Anyway, for a sore throat, there are so many options. Again, a mucilaginous herb, my favorite word in herbalism, mucilaginous. It sounds disgusting. That's probably part of why I love it. And so it's going to be anything that gets slimy. And that sliminess is going to coat your mucous membranes, which are in every organ of our body, but especially in our esophagus, our respiratory system, and our gut. And so soothing herbs are really important, right? And so think about what happens when you cook okra. Most of us know I love okra, but it does get slimy. And okra is actually an herb as well. So we could like make some okra and cook it really well so it's really slimy and eat that. And it would feel really soothing on our throat. Um, some others would be slippery elm, only from a sustainable source. Slippery elm is threatened, so only from a sustainable source. A lot of lozenges have slippery elm in them, so that one's great. Some other ones are marshmallow root, not the candy marshmallow, but it's actually like the fluffy white thing, but it's actually the original marshmallows were made from marshmallow root. Kind of cool. So that's super mucilaginous. There's violet, is mucilaginous, violet leaf. So there's lots of them. But then we also probably want some antimicrobials, right? So red root is one. I'm going to put the species of red root in the chat because there's multiple herbs that can be called red root. It's also called New Jersey tea sometimes. We that was the one that Emily was harvesting in the picture on social media. Ceanothus, I think this is right, Americana or americanus, something like that. Red root, it's antimicrobial. I would do that in a tincture, the root. Bee balm is wonderful, the leaf. Calendula and red root are awesome lymphatics. So when we get some kind of infection in our lymph glands, right? That's often why we get a sore throat. We want something that will take care of that infection. So red root and calendula are awesome. Violet, again, and Spilanthes is a good one. If any of you know Spilanthes, I'll put that in the chat as well. It's a really funny one. It's when you eat it, the flower, or you take the tincture, it makes your mouth tingle. So that's really fun. It's really good for toothaches too, by the way, speaking of first aid. It's sometimes called like toothache plant. So yeah. And you can make a syrup or a spray with any of these or all of these herbs as well. So I would, you could combine those cough herbs with the sore throat herbs. All right. So next we have herbs for stress, anxiety, insomnia, all of those things. What we call nervines in herbalism. So there's so many, right? Y'all know probably already several of them. Chamomile, skullcap. Well, you might not know skullcap. Lavender, you probably know. St. John's wort. We do have to be careful. St. John's wort is one of the few that I'm very, very careful with because it can have a negative effect. It can have lots of contraindications with pharmaceuticals, especially birth control. So be really careful. I wouldn't recommend it if you're on pharmaceuticals, and especially birth control. Lemon balm. Yes, Raven. Lemon balm is an amazing nervine. It's also an antiviral. It's a great antiviral. Thank you for that. So skullcap is one I love. It's also good for pain. Any of these are going to be great in tincture. Several of them in tea as well. Kava, some of you probably know about. Poppy, California poppy. Passion flower. Holy basil is one of my favorite. I've been drinking that with my nettles. And rose. Rose is amazing. Energetically and internally. We can do rose water and just spray it. We can do it in tea, like rose petals. Rose hips are great for immunity. So those are wonderful. And rescue remedy, if y'all don't know about this, it is several flower essences. So flower essences are super duper safe. You can make them yourself. I teach how to make them in herb school, and we make them with what we find. We made an amazing one with magnolia flowers last year. That was really fun. And Rescue Remedy is just a great one to have on hand. It comes in a spray bottle and it comes in pastilles. So these like little, well, I guess they're actually little gummies. So they're delicious. They're candy basically. And they're just so good to have on hand in your first aid kit all the time, everywhere for any kind of trauma, any kind of shock. They'll help bring you down immediately. And they're super safe for anyone, for children, animals, people with allergies. I think they usually do have a little bit of brandy in them, but if you make your own, you don't have to make them with brandy. The brandy is mainly a preservative. Oh, the gummies are just another form of the rescue remedy. Okay. So pastilles, yeah, that's what they're sometimes called. It's just a fancy word. Sometimes it's like for something that dissolves in your mouth, or that's what they call their gummies as well, I think. You have Hillary has dried lemon balm in the garden or from the garden. Can you just make tea for anxiety? But also it's antiviral. Yeah, you could totally make a tea for both. Definitely. And lemon balm is so delicious too. So I love drinking the tea as much as possible. Okay, so that's those guys. Any other questions? So on lemon balm pesto, shut up, Raven. That sounds amazing. You remind me about that. I want to make that. I bet it is so good. Dang. Okay. Um, Speaking of nervines, we're going to talk about pain very briefly because most of the herbs I just mentioned are also good for pain. But specifically, willow and birch, any of the birch species, any of the willow species, people try and tell you it's just white willow, but it's totally not. It's any of the willows. They're hard to identify as species anyway. So I will just use any willow, any birch. Here we have black birch, which is delicious. Um, so harvest the bark, or I prefer the twigs, and they're wonderful for pain. They're what aspirin was originally made out of because they have salicylates in them. And you do want to be careful with folks who are on blood thinners or have blood thinning issues. It's not recommended for them, or for anyone who has an aspirin allergy or is on like an NSAID, FYI. Another one that a lot of people don't know about is called Jamaican dogwood. And that one grows in Florida and it's incredible for pain. It's very strong. Skullcap, again, is great for pain, especially as a tincture. Any of those are wonderful. Okay, and then a lot of the others that we already mentioned, like lavender, is actually great for pain. And poppy, California poppy. All right, moving on. I'm like trying really hard. I want to get y'all through this before we have to end. Okay, allergies. So for seasonal allergies, I mentioned stinging nettle. That is one I just drink as a tea as much as possible. I would definitely start drinking it now if you haven't, and drink it every day, like a quart a day, and make it very strong, like 3 to 4 tablespoons of the herb, the leaf per quart of water. And you just infuse it, make sure you cover it, and that you let it infuse for at least 20 minutes, if not overnight. And then just drink it. It is a diuretic. It will make you pee. So don't drink it close to bedtime. And drink lots of water in addition to it so you don't get dried out. Oh, Emily, you know me so well. Emily asks, do stinging nettle and wood nettle have the same properties? I could go on and on about this. I don't know for sure, is my main answer. However, I personally believe so, but I believe wood nettle may not be as strong medicinally because the sting is not as strong. I think that it's partly the formic acid in it that is causing the effect. So since it doesn't have as much formic acid, I think that it might be just a little bit milder. I talked to some of the top herbal researchers in the world about this, and they all said the same thing. They were like, we think it does have a similar effect. There's just has not been as much research on it because nobody's put the money into it. That's what it all comes down to. So yeah, I love wood nettle. I actually sometimes I feel like I love the taste of wood nettle more than I do of stinging nettle. And so I prefer wood nettle for eating, and I prefer stinging nettle for remedies and tea, but I would do either of them interchangeably. So that's a really great question.
Good.
Yes. All right. So seasonal allergies, stinging nettle, always my first go-to prophylactically. You can also get it in capsules. Goldenrod. I harvest goldenrod. I make the tea. I infuse the flowers into honey, which is super delicious. Eat the whole thing. Red clover, mullein, again, Spanish needles, spidens, and ground ivy. Any of those, and all of them actually, I put into a tincture. So again, stinging nettle, goldenrod, red clover, mullein, Spanish needles, and ground ivy, which is a specific species, not just any old ivy. I'll put the species in the chat. Glaucoma heteracea. It's in the mint family. Okie doke. So all of those are in my allergy tincture. Now, that's going to be a little bit different than an allergic react, like a sudden extreme allergic reaction. Some of this is going to be beyond our scope, right? Like somebody has an EpiPen, that's the first, we always want to be honor that, right? Know that they know how to use it, get their permission to use it for them if they need that, unless it's an extreme emergency, and then the Good Samaritan law goes into effect. But otherwise, there are some good ones. Peach leaf is one that I found out about several years ago, which is amazing. And you can make a tincture of it. You can also infuse it into brandy. You can make an oxymel. So that's a really great one. I learned about that one recently from Robin Rose Bennett. She's an incredible herbalist, Robin Rose Bennett. So look her up. And she talked about this on Rosalee de la Fore's podcast, Herbs with Rosalee. We'll put that in the chat as well. Herbs with Rosalee podcast with Robin Rose Bennett. Okay. There you go. Y'all are getting so many resources. How many ounces of nettle to infuse for a strong tea? I don't actually, are you talking about weight, Raven, or volume? I usually do volume and weight. I don't weigh it. I just because I was brought up with the English system, blah blah, I roll. Um, I don't usually weigh my herbs for a lot of things. So, yeah, I just do tablespoons. I do 3 to 4 tablespoons per quart of water, per quart in a quart jar. So hopefully that's helpful. Oftentimes, though, if like, it's about accessibility too, right? So, actually, Susan Weed, who another eye roll, like, there's major issues with that, but she has put out some really good information into the world, but she is very abusive. So, grain of salt, but she does have some good knowledge. And she talks about nourishing infusions. You can look that up. And she used to even have a free like course about it, which she may or may not still have. She talked about making a nourishing infusion, which is like to deeply nourish our bodies with like very mineral rich tonic herbs that were safe for most people to take every day. She talks about 1 ounce of herb per quart. That is a lot of herb. So most people that's not going to be accessible for because that's either going to be very expensive or if you're growing your own, that's going to be a huge amount. Or if you're wild harvesting, that's just so much. But I will say the color that you get is so incredible. When you make that infusion, it's so deeply dark green. It's gorgeous. So, and you can feel it when you drink it, but we don't need to make it that strong. So if you have access to it, sure, weigh out 1 ounce of herb, make your quart of tea. If you don't, 3 to 4 tablespoons is great. So Raven, you can weigh that out in 3 to 4 tablespoons and let me know how much it weighs. Okay. So again, let's see, sudden allergic reactions, peach leaf, ephedra. So ephedrine actually comes from, or originally came, like there's pseudoephedrine, but ephedrine comes from a plant called ephedra. And so you can actually grow this yourself. It's like there's different legality laws with it. So check out the laws where you are. But like there's something called Mormon tea, which is ephedra. And so this is a very important plant to the Mormons, like out in Utah area. And it is amazing for herbs. It can potentially make you kind of jumpy. It can dry you out. So a lot of the allergy herbs are going to be drying because they're like antihistamine herbs. So you do want to make sure you drink extra water with them. Osha is one that I love. It grows out west. However, we do have an Appalachian Osha. The one that grows out west is threatened. It's over harvested. It's super important to the indigenous tribes out west. So make sure you're getting it sustainably if you do buy it. It is freaking fantastic if you infuse the root in honey. It's so freaking delicious. But you can just make that as a tincture as well, along with the Osha as a tincture. Okay, high doses of vitamin C. It is pretty close to impossible to overdose on vitamin C. I'm sure you probably can do it, but it'd be really hard because it's water soluble. So if you are having an allergic reaction, you could do several thousand milligrams of vitamin C powder and it could have an immediate effect. Like I would do 2,000-3,000 milligrams at a time. And it would probably have an immediate effect. That's also great for seasonal allergies. Like if you're having an episode, like an allergy attack, you could do that with the vitamin C. And you could do that like every hour. The only thing is like if you do take too much, you will have diarrhea. So I will let you know that. But for some of us, that could be better than an allergic reaction. Is there a place online to get really high quality herbs if you aren't able to harvest them yourself? Yes. Several places. If any of y'all have good recommendations, please type them in the chat. But A local one is Red Moon Herbs. They buy from local growers. There is some bigger places that sell plants from all over the world, like Star West is one. Um, Mountain Rose Herbs. I've heard differing things about their quality. Frontier, but I've heard people are boycotting them right now, and I haven't actually researched why. So I don't know if it has to, I have a feeling it has something to do with Israel, but I don't know. So do your research on that. I would go to a co-op, but make sure whatever co-op you go to, if there's one near you, that they have good quality. Again, use your organoleptics and look at them. It's hard to know if you don't know what they look like before, like when they're growing, but you want to make sure like they seem like they're good quality. Zach Woods Herb Farm, I think may still be around. There's another local one here in North Carolina called Pangea Herbs. Trying to think of others. Foster Farm Botanicals, and they have sales fairly often. Thank you, Peggy. I didn't know about that one. Peggy says they're in Vermont. I'm going to make a note about that. And 4 tablespoons dry nettles is about 10 grams. Thank you so much, Raven. Raven, do you know how many grams are in an ounce? I know those are different. I want to say actually it's like 120 grams in an ounce. So that's a large difference, right? 10 grams compared to 128 grams. So think about how much more nettle that is that Susan Weed is recommending. Again, great if you can do it, but so much. Oh, Oshala Farms. Peggy, thank you. I feel like I've heard of them. Are they indigenous owned? Do you know? I know that I've heard of them for some reason. Peggy says Oshala Farms, they're super fresh. Oh, no, I don't think so. Okay. Maybe it's somebody else I'm thinking of, but I know I've heard of them and heard good things about them. Thank you for that. Okay. So where were we? Okay. One other I did want to mention that I do keep in my first aid kit, over the counter pharmaceutical is, I don't know, over the counter medication, is Benadryl. And I think like if you're in an emergency situation, it's really good to have this on hand. And you do need to make sure if you're giving it to someone, you ask them, you get permission to give it to them. Like you can't just say, here, take this. You have to be like, I have this. Do you want it? So if somebody was having like an anaphylactic situation, you didn't have an EpiPen, you were far from help, like Benadryl can be amazing, at least until you get to help. So anyway, there's that. All right. I am going to put an article link in the chat, and I'm going to give you this resource too. There's an herbalist named Seven Song. And, oh, there it is. Okay. This is an article of his, and I want to actually, let me make sure that this link still works. But he has so much amazing information on his website, and he has some really good information on allergic reactions in this article. But he has so much free information on his website. He loves to make information accessible to people. He's an incredible clinical herbalist in New York. And so if you're in the New York area and you can't travel to North Carolina for school, I would recommend his school. And then here's his website. But he's got so many articles on there. He also is a part of Ithaca Free Clinic. And so he sees people for free like once a month there. So definitely check out his resources. Peggy says, I just heard of a new small farm called Wild Teal Herb Farm in Maine. Oh, cool. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so what else? Oh, okay. Anyway, I'll get back to that. Okay, any other questions on allergies? We're almost done. I swear. Okay, so digestion. It is good to have some digestive remedies on hand for just like regular old stomach aches, right? Gas, painful belly. Um, for wonderful teas, look into garden tea. They also put money to preserve land. Thanks, Peggy. You are a wealth of information. Okay. Um, I love bitters. I think that just about everyone should have them on hand. You can make your own. You can buy them in the store. This is like what you can get in a bar, but they were originally made as a digestive aid. So they're just bitter herbs infused in alcohol or vinegar. And they stimulate and quicken the digestion. They help digest fat, meat, sugar, rich meals. So you can take them before a meal prophylactically, or you can take them after a meal if you're having indigestion type issues. The only time you wouldn't want to take them is like if your digestion is too quick, you're having diarrhea, things like that. Speaking of which, astringent herbs are great for things like diarrhea. And there are some great options. I learned from Seven Song his favorite astringent. So astringent is going to be anything that's like shrinking and drying. So just like it actually like does something shrinking with the anal opening. So fun times here in the herbal world. But it's real. So anyway, blackberry root is the #1 astringent that he recommends. Seven Song is an herbalist out of New York in Ithaca, and he does a lot of clinic work, free clinic type of work. He sets up at like Occupy and rainbow gatherings, takes his students so they can get clinical experience, various places. So he has a lot of free resources on his website that I shared for first aid especially. So blackberry root tincture or tea is a great one. Apple twig, actually, and related species. So like crab apple would be great. Pear twigs, rose twigs, any of those. Blackberry leaf would be great. Anything in the rose family, which is any of those berries I just mentioned. Any of their leaves, just make tea out of any of those. They'd be great astringents for stopping diarrhea. And by the way, apple twigs made into tincture in brandy are frigging delicious. Just saying. All right. What we call carminatives in herbalism. So basically herbs that are going to be soothing to the digestive system. Most of us know these. Mint, lemon balm, ginger, cinnamon, all of those kinds of things. Anything in the mint family, chamomile, any of those guys. There was a question, does anyone have a source for organic brandy? I don't think that I do, but that would be lovely. Okay. So yeah, any of those herbs, I would just make tea, drink it. Strong, make it strong. What do you suggest infusing with nettles that will enhance the taste? I guess it is kind of an acquired taste, huh? I like the taste, but anything that you like the taste of, Not anything, obviously, but anything you like the taste of. Anything in the mint family, that's always my go-to for taste. So lemon balm, peppermint, spearmint, any other mint. Um, there's one I was just gonna say, and now I can't remember. Oh, Peggy says I love to infuse it with marshmallow leaf or root to ease the dryness. Such a good idea. Yeah, I was gonna say I've started adding mulberry leaf to my allergy formula that I told y'all because that blend was so drying. And mulberry leaf is moistening. It's not mucilaginous, but it's moistening. It's also a really great one for if you are inhaling particulate matter. So, like if you're somewhere where there are wildfires going on, you can make mulberry leaf into tincture or tea. And if you have, I for years until like last year lived with a wood stove. And so it didn't seal super well. And so I would drink mulberry leaf tea or tincture, do a tincture. Okay. So where are we at here? So yeah, anything to make it taste better. This is so good with kids too, right? To get them to drink things. Anything in the mint family. Okay. So I already talked about food poisoning. So charcoal tablets, charcoal capsules, and dill, like just like dill herb leaf, echinacea. Perilla is one that many of you may not know about, but in Asian countries, they serve this with sushi to help prevent food poisoning. Pretty cool, right? So if you have some bad fish and you're eating perilla with it, I'll spell that. It's also sometimes called shiso, Shiso. And you can grow this super easily. I think it's in the mint family. It does spread really easily. So be aware where you're planting it is where you want it. But Perilla has so many medicinal qualities. It's like supposed to be anti-carcinogenic, anti-cancer, lots of amazing properties to that one. And super cool thing I learned, I teach about this in my flower essence course, and I can't remember off the top of my head now where I found this. I want to say it's called Hope something Farm. But they like where they're from in the Northeast, it's like illegal to make remedies with alcohol. Oh, Green Hope Farm. I'm going to give you all this resource in the chat. And this goes to the page on red shiso. They actually, I think that they grow it themselves, but they make what they call a stabilizer out of it. And you can add it to your own like flower essences and things. It's a non-alcoholic way to preserve your flower essences. So freaking cool. So you can use that as a preservative as well. Kind of interesting when you think about like how that must work, right? Because it's a preservative and it helps like prevent food poisoning. So it's like interesting to think about like the action of that, right? Super duper cool. Okay. So let me see where I was at here. So yeah, any of those for food poisoning. All right. Oh, I think were you asking in question, Hillary, what were the other belly soothing ones? Is that what you're saying? Okay, so that's digestion. Antivirals, we touched on this already, but lemon balm, which is amazing for any kind of herpes virus. So of course our mind always goes to like genital herpes when we talk about herpes, but also herpes viruses are um, chickenpox, shingles. What else? There's something I'm forgetting, I feel like, but any of those. And cold sores. So yeah, any of those you could do lip balm for cold sores internally and externally. So pretty awesome. And other antivirals, elderberry and flower. Again, thinking about autoimmune, also echinacea, thinking about autoimmune conditions, like be careful. And what else? Astragalus root. This is an amazing one. It may affect autoimmune conditions. I cannot remember. So check that out. But it is a root, it's a Chinese root. And what I do with astragalus, I just made some yesterday. Uh, I put it in my bone broth. So when I'm infusing bone broth, I just put it in there, like when I'm cooking it. So it's a super nourishing Chinese herb, and you can get it in powder. Is it considered a tonic? I believe so. Yeah, I think it's like it is a food herb. It's safe for most people for everyday use. They add it in food all the time in China. Okay, other antivirals, ginger, mullein, oregano, bee balm. Bee balm is called wild oregano sometimes. And there's a wild weed that grows around here called self heal or heal all. That one's really great. Mhm. Okay, so asthma attacks, I mentioned lobelia in small doses of the tincture, several drops, like 1 to 7 or so drops. Works for some people, doesn't for others. Smoking the lobelia leaf as well. Also mullein. Maybe, I don't know if you're in an attack, but like just for helping soothing everyday asthma kind of stuff. Also, coffee, interestingly. If you're having an asthma attack, you can try drinking coffee. Also, coffee tincture, which is, oh my God, it tastes so good, y'all. I can't really drink coffee because it makes me crazy, but the tincture is delicious. Um, and so those herbs are bronchodilators. They dilate that whole bronchial system. So that is how they work. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. And just also know, like, sometimes nothing will work. Like, you have to have an inhaler, you have to get emergency care. So be aware. Um, what's the one I mentioned for cold sores? Lemon balm as a tea or a tincture. Have I ever made a coffee tincture? Yes. Actually, I should pull it out and show y'all. I just had it out the other day because we were making several blends to send to our friends in Cherokee. And it was in there for respiratory stuff. Let me see. Hold on. I'll grab it to show you. So that's what it looks like. You can see the label. It's obviously super duper dark. And I made it with Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee and 50% Everclear. So 50% alcohol. So yeah, there you go. All right. You're welcome. The ground. Oh, that's a really good question. I still have it in there. So yeah, it looks like I did grind it first. and then just pour the alcohol over it. Okay, so what else? Nope, nope, blue. We're so close to being done. Um, all right, tick bites. This one is so tricky. So, um, Stephen Buhner just passed like last year, and that was really sad. There's also some controversial stuff about Stephen Buhner, so I can't say that I 100% endorse him. So be aware. I don't know all about it, but there was some stuff he said that apparently was not good. But anyway, he has, I believe his website is still up, and there's a great book by him called Healing Lyme, Natural Prevention and Treatment of Lyme, et cetera, et cetera. So you can look that up. Lyme is very complicated. It shows up in so many different ways with so many different symptoms. So just be aware, it's very hard to deal with. If you catch it early, that's the most important thing. Most people recommend, if you know you have gotten a tick bite, to just, and you're having symptoms, to just go ahead and do the antibiotics. That's probably what I would do. But if you know you got bit and it's immediately after, like within a couple days, there is a protocol that Stephen Buhner created, and it's basically doing a lot of echinacea tincture and a lot of astragalus tincture. Like, I can't remember the exact amounts, but I've done it before. And I think it's like taking like a 2-ounce bottle of each one of the tincture and taking the whole thing over 2 days, like 2 to 3 days. That's a lot of tincture, but it supposedly works. So there you go. Oh, thank you. Peggy just shared a link from Seven Songs website about notes on Lyme disease. Thank you so much. That's great. Yeah, there is a lot of good information out there, and there are doctors who specialize in Lyme disease. And there's a lot of controversy. A lot of doctors have been forced to stop practicing. It's really sad and really hard. I do want to share with y'all a resource. Some friends of mine have a company called Reverence Botanicals. The whole family, unfortunately, has Lyme disease, the kids and the parents. And they grow and make lots of remedies for Lyme disease, for people with Lyme disease. Why? Oh, here it is. I'm going to share the link to their website. It's Raven, it's Stephen Buhner with an N. I think it's Buehner, maybe. Let me see if I can find his website to pull it for you. Okay, so here's Reverence Botanicals. They're a wealth of information. And Buehner, sorry. Okay, so here's his website, and then you should be able to look up. There's lots of articles and books and things attached to that. So there should be lots of Lyme resources on his website. Hopefully still. I haven't looked at it for a while. So, what else? Okay, homeopathics. Homeopathics are like a super weird thing. They're made similar to flower essences, where they're super dilute. And if you tested them, you can't actually find a trace of the plant material in them. So again, like flower essences, they're super safe for everyone and animals and kids. And they work really weird. Like it's the energy of the plant that you're getting. So I can't explain how they work. It's weird. But they do work for a lot of people. And so there are a few remedies. I don't know like a lot about a lot of the remedies, but I do keep several on hand. And I also I'm going to share with you another resource, which is Reverence Botanicals, like those folks blog on another website called Lyme Compass. And it has a ton of Lyme resources. So like how to get financial help if you need treatment and can't afford it. Co-infections, a lot of herbs they recommend and how they handle it. So in their family. Super duper helpful. Okay. And again, they grow everything that they make. So it's pretty incredible. Okay, so homeopathic remedies to have on hand. One is called, hold on. One is called Rhus Tots, R-H-U-S. I put it in the chat. And it's actually made from poison ivy, but it's so dilute that there's no trace of it in there. And some people take it if they get poison ivy or as a preventative. Another one, it's also supposed to be good for arthritis and arthritic conditions. I talked about arnica already for muscle aches, for any kind of injury, for bruising. There's also a product, I'll type it in the chat. It's called Tramiel. And it has, I think it has arnica in it along with other homeopathics. It's a great one to just have on hand. They make it in a cream and an internal pellet type thing. So that's another great one for any kind of like injury type situation. There's one called Ledum, Ledum, that's really good for bug bites because like things like mosquitoes can carry disease. And so it is good to have something like that on hand. I don't know if it's good for tick bites too. That would be interesting to look up. And then the other one is Apis. It's APIS. It's actually made from bees, from what I understand. So depending how you feel about that, but and it's for bee stings. So if you're somebody who really reacts to bee stings, that could be a good thing. I don't know how I feel about like killing bees, but for that situation, not awesome. But oh, I should have said too, topically, I guess I don't have this on my list, but plantain, the weed plantain, you can just chew up the leaves and put it on the bee sting, and it's the best remedy I know of for bee stings. Teach it to every child you know, please, because it usually grows in places where you would get stung by a bee. Pretty awesome, anyway. Okay, so talk about hair of the dog, yeah, right? I think that might be everything I have besides some more resources. There's another Seven Sun article on wilderness first aid that I can share. I will put that in the chat. And there you go. Let's see, what's this one? There's one here that I don't actually know what it is. No. Let me try it out and see if I can figure out what it is. So type in any questions that you have. Oh, great. This is an incredible one from Herbalista that I was talking about. It's 6 pages. It also has other resources within it. And so, yeah, they're the ones who started the herb clinic in Atlanta. And that was Lorna. She was a student of Seven Songs. And she does herbal clinics all over the world. She's currently, as far as I know, in Ireland, where she's starting the herb bike. And she's been working with some kids in Africa to start a mobile clinic. She does like really cool things. So there's that. And then also, I think that she has a toolkit that you can find. Let me see if I can. I think it's just on the Herbalista website where you can join for like $5 a month or something and get just so much ongoing resources for herbal first aid. So yeah, but there's lots of resources out there that you can find. I'll just put the Herbalista website up here, and then you can find all the cool resources on there. Okay, so there's that. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna yeah, if you want to, actually it's still on focus mode. So you can go ahead if you're cool with your voice being on the recording, you can just unmute yourself and your picture won't show up. Or you can type it in the chat. I will also, once I stop recording, your you can wait if you would rather, and we can have a chat then. But if anybody has a question now, your question might be pertinent to everyone else here and on the recording. And I also just want to remind y'all, well, one, say thank you so much for being here. This is way more than I thought you would be getting. So, but I'm glad. I'm glad you have it. We all need this material. And I really also wanted to give y'all an idea of what kind of teacher I am, what you would get in my classes. I would love for you to join us at Wild Crafted Herb School 2024. It starts in April, one Friday and Saturday a month. Again, I can share that link with y'all. And we have payment plan options. So lots of people travel since it's just 2 days a month. You, again, like learn all the cool stuff that I was saying, intro to botany, plant ID, Afrobotany, indigenous herbalism, get to go to Cherokee, learn about wild Cherokee foods and medicinal mushrooms, ecology, habitat. So many things. We study each herb individually. We do make what's called materia medica, where you make your own resource that you can have for the rest of your life and build upon on each herb. Sometimes we even get to cook. We make baskets out of wild plants. So it's really, really fun and amazing to see the community that's created. You don't have to want to become a practicing herbalist. You can just do it to help yourself and your family, your loved ones, your community. So it's the most fun I have. And the best part is you get to be outside in nature all day. How big is the cohort? Liv asks. Up to 20. Last year we had 16. I'd love to have 20, but it's still relatively small. So it's nice, intimate, and I do interview everyone just to make sure that it's a good fit for you. you're a good fit for the school. And that also makes it so that it's like a really safe space for everyone. And you know, I have people only have people in there who I feel like are going to be respectful of everyone. Because like healing is a very intimate thing, right? And we're vulnerable in our healing. So I want to make sure it's super safe for everyone. So that's going on. Please do go to the website, go to that link, check it out, and fill out the prospective student form as soon as you can because we might run out of spots. So I want you to get in if you want to. I'm also going to put my email in the chat, Abby at thewanderschool.com. Hopefully y'all who are watching the recording will be able to see these links. If for some reason you can't, send me an email and Abby, ABBY at thewanderschool.com. And all of this information is at thewanderschool.com. So you can go there and check it out. If you're not able to do herb school, we do have other options. Again, we will have an herbal first aid weekend coming up. I have something called Patreon, which is a platform for ours is for ongoing botanical education. And you can join for a week for free and check it out. And then we have a free class every month. And it's really fun. You get to vote on what the class is. It's just like this, basically, but it happens every month. And it's really great. You get like bonuses from my podcast but like bonus episodes, you get tips and tricks from the foraging field and my kitchen. So that's really great. Starts at $10 a month, super cheap. And then the virtual botany course is up on the website as well. So lots of options to plug in, and there will be plant walks and things coming up. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions or anything else. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm going to stop recording. I wish you lived near me too. If you could travel 2 days a month, that would be awesome. People come from as far as like Atlanta, Kentucky, Wilmington, North Carolina, which is on the coast. Yeah, someday. That would be great. Any day. Sometimes also like let me know where y'all live because I do like to travel and teach here and there. So that's fun. All right, well, I am going to stop recording. And you are so, so welcome. Thanks, Liv. I really appreciate that. Okay, everybody who's on the recording, thanks for being here. Feel free to reach out. Catch me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the places. And happy herbal everything.